Hello. In the Crown of Aragon, 639 years ago, it was February 16th, 1387. My name is Jonathan Seyfried. I'm a PhD candidate in history at the University of New Mexico, and this is the Historian's Notebook, a podcast about how history gets made. Season 1 is titled Moltcara Compagnona. We're looking at a document from each day of the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violant de Bar. Let's begin today's document. Well, today's document has a couple layers of mystery to it. To be honest, I did not expect to see something like this. The topic of today's letter is the same as the one from February 14th. It's in the Varia register, just a couple... Actually, wait, it's in a different Varia register. So it's written a couple days later, but it's put into a different register, and it's from Violant to the Pope, and it's about, I think, the same topic. So it's almost like Violant is sending a reminder, or like a follow-up. It is really something I didn't expect to see because, well, she would have to understand that the first letter couldn't have arrived all that much earlier than this second one. I really don't think that you could deliver a letter from Barcelona to Avignon in 24 hours. I am also pretty skeptical that it could be done in 48 hours. But maybe not? For some reason, Violant is writing a letter on the same topic 2 days later. And the language in this letter is one that has more urgency than what we saw in the February 14th letter. So once again, we have the name Petrus Serva, or something like Peter Servant in English, or maybe Per Servent in Catalan, but I'm not sure. The title associated with Petrus Serva is Archidiacone, or maybe Archidiaconum. And then there's a word following that, which is something like penitentem. And so that's what we know about this Petrus Serva. We know that he's an ecclesiastical official, an archdeacon. We don't know where he's from, like what region of the Crown of Aragon. And in the previous letter, I thought that a reasonable interpretation, based on the not extensive work that I did with it, was that he was being supported for some kind of ecclesiastical office. But this letter really makes it seem like Violant has sent him to Avignon. And the reason for that is the word that comes after his name and title on the fourth line of this letter, which is commissimus. We commission him. And then a little ways down in the letter, we have a phrase at the end of, it's the fourth line from the bottom. It starts with explicandum per ipsum Petrum finem debitum obtenere. So there will be an end to some kind of debt obtained by the same Petrus or Petrum in doing the work of resolving whatever issue. And so there's these two factors in this letter that makes it seem that this Petrus Serva is an emissary, which I didn't get from the previous letter, but looking at it again, I see that it's possible. So I think that Violant has sent this person to Avignon. But then what's mysterious is that there's these two letters in such close proximity to each other, so that we have a kind of, I don't even know what to call it. Is it like nagging? I mean, that's a really kind of, there's a lot of connotations and a lot of gendered connotations to that. So I don't really want to use that word, but I'm trying to think of what is the purpose of sending a follow-up letter so soon. Or maybe this was just how things worked, that you just had to send follow-up letters and that would just be a signal that the matter was an important one. There's just so many questions in my mind seeing this return to the same topic after such a short span of time from the previous letter. So I don't know what is the issue that is trying to be resolved here. I hope to find out at some point. I did do a little searching through a good old ChatGPT for somebody named Per Servent or Petrus Serva. Nothing really seemed to come up. So this has opened up quite a mystery for me, and I'm hoping that I will come across some other additional correspondence that has to do with this archdeacon, and I'll get some kind of clue regarding what this is about. And while we're on the topic of Violant writing to the Pope, the Avignon Pope, where this is taking place during the Great Western Schism, where there's a Pope in Rome, Urban VI, and there's a Pope in Avignon, Clement VII. I just want to draw attention to what I have seen about the way that Violant considers the Pope within the larger scheme of her projects and her rulership. The papal court in Avignon is, yes, a religious center, but almost more importantly, it's a diplomatic center. So there are so many instances of conflict resolution or conflict intensification that take place in the papal court at Avignon. It's also a cultural center where there's troubadour performances regularly. There's a lot of manuscripts constantly being added into the library in the papal court of Avignon. So this is a place where people of high power send emissaries. They themselves might visit. I'm thinking in particular of an episode with Joanna of Naples, who is in Avignon and in the midst of tense conflict over her own rulership of Naples. The papal court in Avignon is where big deals get done, and in particular, marriage negotiations. So what's going to be coming up in a few episodes from now, and then in others throughout the year, is that Joanne and Violant are working to arrange a marriage for their oldest child, who historically is known as Yolanda of Aragon, so named after Violant. Yolanda of Aragon eventually does marry Louis II of Anjou, but that is a long process. The marriage negotiations, they take at least a year, and they're carried out in Avignon. And it's not Petrus Serva who comes up in those negotiations. It's somebody else, a Genoese fellow named Lucino Scorampi. There will be a lot more about him coming up. I think I might have mentioned him once already. But I wanted to mention that these marriage negotiations are high-level diplomatic encounters and endeavors, that the papal court in Avignon is the venue in which that plays out, and that it is extremely important work. So in our time, we might think, oh, why, you just kind of decide to get married, you figure it out, you just pair them up. But actually, these are intense negotiations that have all these additional stipulations and territorial exchanges and money for dowry, and all kinds of deal making gets packed into this marriage negotiation. The marriage is more of like the title of the bill. And then the bill, like in like Congress or something, like it's packed with all these other provisions, and these provisions are all up for negotiation. So the marriage negotiation is a big deal. I don't see anything in here about Petrus Serva in today's letter being involved in the marriage negotiation that is about to be initiated by Joanne and Violant in Avignon. I don't know if he's involved or not. He could be an emissary for a completely different matter. But the important thing to keep in mind when we're seeing Violant writing to the Pope is that she is writing to a nerve center of international diplomacy, and she is asking for the intercession or participation of one of the biggest power players that you could possibly have in the constellation of power elites in Western Europe at this time. I mean, I would put the Duc de Berry as like in the top 5. I would put the Avignon Pope Clement the 7th in the top 5. I would probably put Joanne and Violant in the top 5, actually. And so there's this sense that I'm getting that when we see Violant writing to the Pope like every day and writing a letter like this, which is like a very quick follow-up, I mean, the earlier letter in this one might have been delivered to the Pope's hands at the same time. When I see this happening, I'm thinking that what is being represented here is that Violant, of course, feels very comfortable writing to the Pope about all kinds of stuff. Yes, the letter includes the typical language of we, are requesting your help. We are humilitaire, we are humbly requesting your attention to this. But those words are completely drowned out by the volume, and then just also this kind of immediate following up kind of behavior that we're seeing from Violant. I get the sense that Violant expects the Pope to be acting in accordance with the allegiance, with the kind of partnership that the Crown of Aragon has established with the Avignon papacy at the time of a very troublesome schism. The Crown of Aragon has thrown its weight. As Joan has ascended to the throne, the neutrality that Père the Ceremonious had has been put into the past, and now the Crown of Aragon is firmly behind the Avignon papacy, and I think Violant knows that that was a heavy move, and so I get the sense, and maybe I'm wrong, and I could find out later things, maybe Violant is intimidated writing to the Pope, but I kind of get the sense that Violant is not intimidated at all in writing to the Pope, and that she has expectations of partnership and maybe even expectations of compliance from the Pope. So that might be taking it a little bit too far. But I just wanted to riff for a little while on the possible attitude that Violant displays toward the Avignon Pope. Because to me, this letter raises some really interesting possibilities about that and how Violant sees her own status in relation to one of the most powerful figures in Western Europe at this time. We'll keep track of how Violant corresponds with the Pope, because there's no shortage of letters from Violant to Pope Clement VII. All right, thanks for listening to this episode of The Historian's Notebook, Season 1, Molt Cara Companiona. If you are leaving with more questions than you arrived with, I have done my job, because remember, the motto of The Historian's Notebook is dissatisfaction guaranteed. If you're feeling satisfied completely by any history that you are reading, you're probably reading some bad history. Good history, accurate history, always raises more questions and leaves you dissatisfied. Visit tomorrow. Should I delete that? No, I'm just going to keep it. Visit tomorrow. Let's all visit tomorrow. I like that. In a show about the past, we'll visit tomorrow. I think, maybe more reasonably, you should visit the website to see an image of today's document and additional show notes, and listen again tomorrow to hear about the next day in the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violante de Bar. In the meantime, take care.